Hi, today's presentation is on differentiated instruction. We'll be exploring different methods of instruction along with various different strategies to see how your son or daughter's IEP might be implemented. Let's get started. Real quick, a little bit about ourselves. We are a 501c3 nonprofit that helps families across the state of Florida. We're funded in part by the U.S. Department of Education, providing information, resources, and support to families and educators, just like yourself, basically understand the special education here in Florida. FND, or Family Network on Disabilities, is a national network of individuals of all ages who may be at risk, have disabilities, or have special needs, and their families, professionals, and concerned citizens. It was founded in 1985 by a group of parents with children with disabilities who came together really for mutual support and information sharing. So we're a grassroots organization for persons with disabilities and their families that is family-centered and family-driven. What makes FND unique is that the majority of our board of directors, our management staff, and all of our program staff are parents or family members of persons with disabilities. I myself am a parent of two children with disabilities. My oldest has ADD and is gifted. And my youngest has more significant needs. He has autism. A lot of the strategies and resources that I'm going to share are from me as a parent in sharing things that I found through various trainings I've taken or collaborations with my child's teacher that I found very helpful. So I might share a little bit more on communication and reading strategies because that's where we're at right now. But I'm also sharing a ton of handouts electronically with you that really break down a lot of what I'm basically doing an overview for differentiated instruction. So I'm excited that you'll be receiving those as well. So one more thing is that we're not doctors or lawyers, so we don't give legal advice, and we're not interpreting the law, and we're definitely not providing medical advice to families. What your learning objectives for today, we hope, is that you will learn new vocabulary related to differentiated instruction. Also understand those basic principles of differentiated instruction in the elements of content, process, and product in an academically diverse classroom. And I'll be explaining those elements. And also hopefully be able to implement one or more instructional strategies that support differentiation. So now, against the common belief, DI, which is short for differentiated instruction, is not a new idea. Back in the times of the one-room schoolhouse, makes me think of Little House on the Prairie, but anyways, where teachers didn't really have any other choice but to differentiate. Their students vary greatly in age, in their motivation, and their proficiency. So teachers had to respond to their individual needs when teaching. So even though the term differentiation might be new to you, the teaching philosophy itself is not. I want to give you what is a textbook definition of differentiated instruction. And it says here, differentiation can be defined as a way of teaching in which teachers proactively modify curriculum, teaching methods, resources, learning activities, and student product to address the need of individual students and or small groups of students to maximize the learning opportunity for each student in the classroom. Okay? Whoops. So differentiated instruction basically means that you proactively, from the beginning, are addressing needs, even in the normal lesson, that you're including more than one avenue for success. It means that you think about the diversity of your learner when you're planning and don't ever hopefully fall into the trap of thinking of that one size fits all, or that your teacher doesn't. Students are alike, but they're different in so many ways, so unique. You want to look at these listed bullets here, and I'll read them out loud to you. You want to consider interests and learning style, their social cultural challenges, personal life experience, what's going on at home, their ability, intelligence. Are they English as a second language learners? What about their motivation? Unfortunately, some classrooms structure does not address this student diversity. In fact, that's the biggest mistake, is to teach all children as if they're all the same. So let's dig in a little bit. Now, this doesn't mean that teachers individually tailor instruction for all students. Differentiated instruction, I'm going to show you a pyramid model that really shows you how students their supports are met. But in differentiated instruction hopefully works with groups of students. But what makes this challenging for teachers is that students' needs vary, right? So it can vary across content area. So for example, some students excel with math but struggle with reading. But then it can even be within content area. So it could be math, but they might be struggling with fractions. And then, of course, across the whole school year. So a student might be doing well in reading in the beginning of the year and then slowly decline in progress. So because a student's need changing frequently, teachers should be familiar with two general principles of strategies of differentiated instruction. The first is ongoing assessment, and the second is flexible grouping. And we'll get to the third one in a minute. But basically, ongoing assessments. So rather than assessing a student only at the end of the unit, teachers can use assessments during, before, after a unit, and gather that critical information to provide effective instruction and quicker response. And so by frequently assessing a student's knowledge and skills, teachers can use that information to develop and refine instruction to meet the student's shifting needs. Additionally, you can assess their interests and learning profiles, and I'll address more, we'll hit that more in the next slides. But then by knowing the student a little bit better, teachers can design tasks that are engaging, motivating, and more accessible. And flexible and varied grouping, to best address the learning needs of all students, teachers should use a variety of grouping. Whole group, small group. Small group usually has 6 students, maybe a medium-sized group. They can even do peer pairings, in addition to having students work independently. Now, respectful tasks. This is important, especially for our students that might be, a few years behind, either socially or academically. It's a principle of differentiated instruction where all students should be engaged in tasks that are interesting and challenging and engaging, and basically focused on the key concepts and skills introduced by the lesson or unit. It is often the case in traditional classrooms that a teacher's instruction targets the average student, while struggling learners are assigned drills and practice problems, and sometimes, even advanced students work on more tangible tasks. So in a DI classroom, each student, regardless of his or her skill level, should really work on respectful tasks, okay? Now, how do teachers differentiate? Well, first of all, like I said earlier, they have to know their students. And these 3 topics here really help do that. So while we think about all the different elements of content, process, and product, I want you to always be thinking about readiness, interest, and learning profile for each element. So, for example, readiness refers to a student's knowledge and skill level regarding given content. So a student's readiness level might vary across subjects or content area. For example, a student may have extensive knowledge about ancient Egypt, but have very little knowledge about the Incan civilization, depending on what kind of interest they have. Teachers can, of course, determine the level at which student is working in a given subject area by assessments, formal and informal, just talking to the student, viewing a student's academic record, examining work samples, or really, just having that conversation with that child and asking the student to complete various questionnaires or charts, self-assessments even. Additionally, a student's readiness may be influenced by his or her background knowledge or life experience or previous learning. What kind of school did they come from? Interest refers to topics or skills or activities that pique a student's curiosity or inspire him or her. And teachers can discover their students' interest by determining what topics they enjoy or which activities they engage in outside of the classroom. Again, just talking to their student. There is an interest inventory, and that actually is one of our handouts I'm going to give you, which is really great to help start that conversation. But they can even learn to journal about themselves. They can participate in classroom icebreakers, all kinds of things for learning profile. Learning profile actually refers to a student's preferred method of learning. Are they a visual learner? Are they hands-on learner? Environmental factors that influence a student's learning. Bright lights, do they affect them? A student's profile can also be influenced by gender, culture, their sensory needs, their communication needs, what have you, lots of things. So an example of this for my son, his learning profile, is that he is a very hands-on learner. In fact, again, connecting to reading, he was not a happy reader, or so I was told. And so we learned that if we paired his reading with activities, that he would remember the material and he would be more motivated. It was all about motivation for him. So we did let's see if I have it. Oh, the Magic Treehouse series. And we created bags for him. Can you see that? And in that bag, there were books. There was an archaeology little kit that you can get from a Hobby Lobby or something, where you can, he was learning how to dig and excavate. So through that activity, he learned a lot of vocabulary. And so we were able to also connect him to videos about different things related to dinosaurs. So that made it more interesting for him and gave him more background knowledge. So that's an idea. Okay, so these are the elements that you're going to incorporate, those three, readiness, interest, and learning profile. So you're going to consider these four elements: content, process, product, and learning environment, as ways that teachers can differentiate through. Okay, so as teachers begin to differentiate, these three main instructional elements can be adjusted to meet the needs of their learners. So with content, basically content is the knowledge and skills the students need to master. That's all it is. Process is like the activities the students use to master the content. So for example, archaeological dig for my son, that would be a process. Still getting the same material, but we're finding different things to make it interesting for him. The product is basically the method the students use to demonstrate learning. So that could be assessments, but the assessments can be informal. There's a ton of activities that I'll share that I have on handouts that'll give you examples of how you can evaluate to see if they've learned the material. And then finally, learning environment. That's sometimes included as one of the classroom elements associated with differentiated instruction. It refers to the organization and atmosphere of the classroom. Okay, so let's drill down. So when teachers differentiate content, the same concept or skill is taught to each student still. However, the curriculum used to teach the concept or skill might be different for different students. So again, readiness, interests, and learning profile are considered within content. So examples of what might be differentiating content at the elementary level include things like using reading materials at varying readability levels. Sometimes my son, when he would get a chapter book, especially when he was transitioning into a chapter book, we would fill in the back information that he didn't know with a lower level book. So he's still reading the chapter book, but he was also getting some lower level readability to help him understand vocabulary and concepts. Putting text material on tape. Again, I know I'm focused on reading and I apologize, but one thing that really helped for us is that we realized that his fluency and his vocabulary and his comprehension didn't need to be all together, that maybe he could hear it and then answer comprehension questions, and then kind of going back and forth and trying different things like that. Using spelling or vocabulary lists as readiness levels. Presenting ideas through both auditory and visual means. Using reading buddies, we talked about that. Small groups, various things. There's different things that I put in your packet. One of them is learning contracts for older kids. Where's the camera? And that's great because it helps them understand the purpose of learning and gives them some good outcomes, some good language on the benefits of having knowledge in certain topics. It explains the role. It's really cool. I also have this packet, which is, trying to find the camera. There we go. Learning and Succeeding in Caring Environment. It's by a school talks. Anyways, I found it and it was really great. I wish I could pronounce the county, but it's very hard to pronounce. But anyways, I want to talk about this because it has tons of ideas for centers and groups that can be grouped by multiple intelligence, which we talked about, kinesthetic learning, visual learning, auditory learner. It also has things like, hold on, I'll read them. Just different strategies. It breaks it up into intelligence, multiple intelligence. So like for visual, spatial, it might give you ideas like using mind maps or graphic organizers or video, color coding things. But like for a kinesthetic, hands-on person, role playing and walkabouts, maybe dancing or lip syncing, math manipulatives, activity centers, body language, all kinds of things from math and reading here. And then it even breaks it down into interpersonal, where some kids might want to work more independently and some may want to work paired off, like with a jigsaw puzzle or drama, debates, what have you. So this is chocked full of different activities and various strategies. Okay. Moving on, when teachers differentiate process, they teach the same concept or skill to each student. However, the manner in which each student makes sense of the topic or skill can vary. Again, a lot of ideas in that packet. So content and the process of how you're going to get that student to absorb the material and be motivated to learn. So teachers should vary activities students use to master the concept or skill. They can decide how best to do this by taking into account their students, again, their readiness, their interests, and learning profiles. And I gave you a lot of activities examples. Oh, there is a great website. It's called Florida Center for Reading Research. And I found this site when we were really struggling, and I was trying to find fun activities. And what I love about this site is it has all those pre-made graphic organizers that you might hear teachers talk about. And again, since we were working on the Magic Treehouse book with Jack and Annie, he was learning a lot about Jack and Annie from one book to the other. And so here is, I don't know if you can see it, a really cool way for him to start filling out information about each character. And then as he progressed and didn't need the pictures because he's older now, then they have him where it's just you fill in the blank to really help guide his thinking. Same thing where there's pictures for, where characters, setting, problem, event, that kind of stuff. There's one there. But then they have written ones too. Tons and tons of graphic organizers that really help a child, especially with impaired executive function and working memory and all that, help them drop their thinking. Okay. Tiered assignments can also be differentiated based on product, and teachers can use what I've been referencing is the multiple intelligence. It's called the Howard Gardner multiple intelligence test. They can form groups with it, and they can help them hone on a particular skill. So like one group would be bodily kinesthetic, and their task would create that skit. Another group would be visual spatial. Maybe their task would be to illustrate, draw something. So a lot of ideas around that piece. Excuse me. Even writing a letter or puppet show, or really, it depends on the age, and you're most likely not going to be doing puppet shows in middle school and high school, but there's still ways to differentiate respectfully with respectful tasks as the child matures. Okay. So without an effective learning environment, without rules, procedures, respect for others, differentiating content, process, and product might be more difficult to accomplish. It will definitely not result in expected positive outcomes. So some examples of differentiating the learning environment at the elementary level is just making sure that there's places in the room to work quietly without distraction. And maybe there's a child with sensory that needs to work in a quieter spot. It might be that the student is having a hard time staying still. It might be that they get to stand up in the back in the classroom during lecture time. Maybe even providing material that reflects a variety of those cultural and home settings. And setting out clear guidelines for independent work that matches the individual's needs. Another thing that was really important for us is that we needed our son to be able to understand routine, and developing routines that allow students to get help when the teacher's busy with other students. So giving him kind of a cheat sheet on his desk of what to do from maybe one transition to the next, or the process of figuring out a word problem, any kinds of those little cheat sheets. And helping students understand that some learners need to move around again to learn, while others need to just have better seating, whether it be up front or quieter. Okay? So, getting in the zone, what does that mean? Well, there's a term that I heard in the autism community that I'll share that I think is cool, and it's called productive uncertainty. We want our students to want to learn. We don't want them to get to the point where they're scared or dejected or feel like they're over their head. So productive uncertainty to me means that they might not know what is going on. They may not know the material yet. So they're a little uncertain, but they're at the place where they still feel safe and they want to learn. So if you look at the slide, you might hear, if it's too easy, you might hear a student say, I get it right away. I already know how. This is a cinch. I'm sure to make an A. Those kids might get bored. And then too hard, I don't know where to begin. Missing key skills. I feel frustrated. Or worse, that they would exhibit a behavior to try to get away from a difficult task. You want them in that just right area where they know some things, they do have to think and work, and they do feel challenged, but they are still in the zone. Okay? This is another method that teachers use. It's called Bloom's taxonomy. It's been around for a long time. It's been updated in that it's a guide to develop tasks at various challenging levels. So you might be wondering, okay, I understand tiers, as far as supporting the student within the content, process, and product, but how much do we push? How much does a teacher push so that they are in the zone? Well, this is a great way for the teacher to understand what tasks they are able to accomplish. And what it does, it breaks down their critical thinking skills into 6 stages of thinking. Remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. So on the slide, you'll see it starts from the lower order, where it's low order thinking skills, LOTS is the acronym, to the higher order thinking skills, which is HOTS. So, for example, Googling and recording are associated with the low order thinking skills of remembering, while filming and podcasting might be associated with higher order thinking skills for creating. And having an organized set of objectives really helps teachers to plan and deliver appropriate instruction. It helps them design valid assessments, assessment tasks and strategies, and it really ensures that instruction and assessments are really aligned with the objectives and the state standards. And I've got, I think, at least 2 different electronic handouts for you related around this Bloom's taxonomy, so you can have a little bit more information on that. Okay. Now, how do schools organize supports for students as a whole? This pyramid will help you understand that. For one thing, at the school level, Florida has what's called a Florida Multi-Tiered System of Support, or MTSS. And basically, it's a framework used to maximize the success of all students. It's not a separate program. It's not a class or an intervention, but rather just a way of organizing instruction and interventions to help all students. So instruction is organized into tiers or levels of support, this pyramid. Tier 1, and you see the green at the bottom, is your Universal Design for Learning, or UDL. Basically, that is supports that all of the students in the school have access to. It gives all of the students equal opportunities to learn. All students receive high quality instruction in academics through UDL. Okay? Now, as you move up into the red tier, differentiated instruction, which is what we've been talking about, this is, in addition to Tier 1, students would also get more support and also receive small group interventions and supports. And the difference is maybe increased time, smaller groups of students, or more narrow focus on instruction. Teachers adapt instruction to students' differences. Now, Tier 3 is where you're getting, it says SDI, the little blue at the top, is SDI stands for Specialized Design Intervention. So in addition to Tier 1 and 2, students receive Tier 3 interventions and receive the most intensive supports based on individual need. And the difference is individual team-based problem solving, increased time, smaller groups of students, and narrowed focus of instruction. They are adapted to the needs as appropriate to the needs of an eligible student. What that means is when you are getting specialized design instruction, your student is most likely either getting evaluated and has met the criteria for specialized design instruction in an individualized education program, or already has an IEP. And that's where they actually can tailor instruction more to that child. Okay? So this is the end of the presentation. There is a video that I'm hoping will play okay for this recording that I think will really bring home everything that we've talked about around addressing the unique needs of each child and understanding differences and how to best support them. So I'm going to say thank you and goodbye. And then I'm going to try to play this video for you. It's about a 5-minute video, so hopefully you enjoy it. It's an animal fable, basically in leveraging strengths. It was adapted of a fable that a gentleman by the name of George Revis wrote back in 1940 when he was a superintendent of the Cincinnati Public School. So I think you'll enjoy it, and thank you for listening. Goodbye.